What's up guys, in this video we're going to go through everything you need to know about improving and becoming a good PvMer from an absolute beginner. We're going to go through and cover the absolute basics along the lines of what levels and stuff you want to focus on and skills and all that sort of good stuff. And then we're going to talk about gear optimization and acquiring gear and how you prioritize it. And then we're going to talk about the many different things of PvM as well that you should focus on as you do try and take on PvM from the beginning. So we're talking about preparing for PvM, and then we're talking about learning and improving at PvM. As you can probably see, this video is super long, so there is timestamps in the description if you already have certain parts of it, especially the first one, as that's more talking about levels and such, so if you're past that point, just skip to the next bit. But I did want to go into in-depth detail to make sure it was clear for people learning and stuff, so I've not cut this shorter to try and get more views or whatever. It's going to be a long one, but we're going to go fully in-depth and we're going to explain things as clearly as possible. With that being said, here goes the very first part of the video, which is talking about levels and unlocks and other things that you're going to want to need, and it's the long one, so check the timestamp if you want to skip it. The first thing of all that you're going to want to work on is going to be your account overall in terms of levels and unlocks. Now, unlocking stuff for PvM is super important and makes so much difference that you may not even consider it. To become a PvMer, which is the end game content in RuneScape, PvM killing bosses is meant to be the end game sort of stuff. Yes, there is some bosses you can kill earlier on, such as God Wars Dungeon 1, such as the Queen Black Dragon, all of this sort of stuff, but PvM and boss content overall is supposed to be high level stuff. Even when God Wars 1 released, it was considered the end game of that time. So you will still be working a while to be prepared for even this sort of content. So what sort of levels are you going to be looking at, and what should you be working towards in terms of actual skills? I do want to make a point of saying before we go through all of the levels, they are going to be pretty high levels because they're things that are going to set you up for always in the future. But if you don't have these levels, you can still do some of the lower level PvM along the way, but I would definitely make this your main focus before anything else. You want to make sure you get these because they make a huge difference in comparison to a lot of other things in the game. So with that being said, the first thing is going to be working towards a combat level that is going to vary depending on the combat that you're going to be doing. If you were doing God Wars Dungeon 1, you can probably get away with level 70 combat. It's not that difficult. But if you're looking at doing any boss, having your character PvM ready, then level 90 plus is where you want to be eventually. Having this available so you can use the tier 90 weapons in the game makes a big difference. This is definitely going to take a lot longer than it used to with the new combat rebalancing, but it's going to be worth the time and effort that you put into it. And you don't want to spend time killing off bosses that you're under-leveled on and not really being efficient at them if you can focus on getting your character in a better position to do that anyway. This will be more rewarding and a lot more worthwhile. The next thing is going to be unlocking overloads. Overloads at level 96 Herblore, which can be boosted from I believe 89, is super useful and going to be a world of difference. Overloads are going to boost your stats and keep them boosted for you, meaning you can use things like Sourdough and Bruise to be able to heal up as well during fights. Now this is just the base version of overloads. Eventually you want to push your Herblore level up even more to get the Elder overloads and other variants, but for the time being the base version is going to be plenty to get yourself well on the way to then killing other bosses and making money from those bosses to reinvest back into your account to get the other levels as well. You're also going to want to take a look at getting 95 prayer. This is going to be another long one. This is going to take a long time. It's expensive. So like I say, if you don't have 95 prayer and you're trying to kill bosses, that's fine. But anytime you get any profits, like a good drop, for example, and if you're killing like God Wars Dungeon 1, whatever, you get a few mil here and there, reinvest it back into your character. Either use that money to make more money so you can invest that into your prayer, or to take it and invest it directly back into prayer as well. Getting these levels, the overload and the prayers and whatnot, will make making more money in the future even faster. You want level 95 prayer because at some point you're going to want to complete the Temple at Sentistan quest. This is going to unlock the ancient curses, and having level 95 prayer gives you soul split, and it also gives you the massive damage boosts as well. One day you're going to want level 99, but don't worry about that for now. Following on from prayer, you're going to want to take a look at summoning. Summoning at level 96, which again is super high, super expensive, and going to take a long ass time, so it's going to be a future goal, things to keep in mind and to set yourself to do in the long term. 96 summoning gives you access to all of the familiars that you're going to need, which gives you the Ripper Demon, the Calgarian Demon, the Hellhound, and then anything before that level as well, such as a Pack-Yak or such as a Nihil if you do need them. So hitting 96 gives you access to all of those familiars, and trust me, you're going to notice the difference between using a Ripper Demon and using like whatever it is before that. The damage difference is crazy and it will carry a lot of your fight. Now you are going to need to complete a few quests along the way as well to get unlocks, but the main one is going to be that temple at Sentistan. To do this, you're also going to complete the Desert Treasure quest, which is going to give you ancient magics, and then there'll be certain items that you'll want along the way, which isn't going to be included in this video, but will also require quests and other tasks to unlock as well. But you'll find those in some of my other videos that talk about unlocks and stuff that you may want to get as a PvM. I just want to clarify once again that this is stuff that you will work towards along the way. You can start PvMing and doing the low level stuff before getting all of these things, but any rewards that you get from them should be put back into your account, and your main focus should be working on leveling up your account to these points and unlocking the stuff that you need to be PvM ready. With the biggest section of this out of the way, let's move on to the next stuff. Next, I want to talk about gear, and this was an issue that a lot of people had along the way in the past because they would invest all their money in gear, but not their levels or their skills that we mentioned before, and then they would still struggle in PvM because they have the gear for stuff, but they don't have the unlocks, and the unlocks are more important than the gear in most situations. Like having Elder Overloads, having the tier 95 curses and whatnot is going to be a bigger benefit than having a slight upgrade in gear. That being said, you do have to have some gear to do some PvM, and I mean, this solution's been kind of fixed for you recently anyway by Necromancy. Necromancy gear is going to be given to you as you go through the Necromancy quest line and progress through that skills leveling. I would suggest everybody to actually do this because it's going to provide you with upgrading your gear along the way every single tier until you get to tier 90. Now, this is the cheapest and most effective way of getting yourself to tier 90 gear in the game right now. Not to mention, Necromancy is a hell of a lot stronger than all of the combat styles, so I would suggest starting with this at least anyway. It makes total sense to go through the Necromancy path first, get the really strong gear, which is a lot cheaper to access as well, get the upgrades that don't cost you a ton of money because upgrading through the Necromancy tiers is super cheap. You only have to do a few tasks and then you'll get the next upgrade, and then once you start reaching the tier 80, tier 90 stuff, it gets a little bit more pricey, but even the tier 90 gear set is only like 50 mil, which for someone who's working on tier 90 combat gear, 50 mil is not that big of a deal at that point in time. However, once you reach this point, you're still going to be wanting to take a look at things like your accessories, essences of finality, different rings and whatnot, and god books for your pocket slots, and many different other pieces of gear as well, different gloves, different boots, all of this sort of stuff, right? This can get pretty pricey, but again, you're going to want to prioritize these skill unlocks first because this is going to make the biggest difference, and then you start looking at gear. Now, I'm going to link in the description as well, PvMe Discord. This is going to be super helpful as it has a gear progression path for you to look at, and they'll pretty much tell you the best order in which to buy stuff once you do have those skills and stuff done. Don't get overly caught up in getting loads of gear before you get your character ready. Once you've got that, the sky's your limit. There's so many unlocks to get, and just enjoy the grind of getting them. But absolutely take advantage of the Necromancy tier 90 gear. It's too good to pass up on. So once you've got your skills and you've got some basic gear, then actually it is time to start looking into doing PvM. So the next things that we are actually going to be talking about will take into account that you are going now to do the bosses. So we're going to be talking about inventory management as the next thing, because this is super important and where a lot of people struggle and don't realize that this makes such a big difference to actually learning to kill bosses, and that you're putting yourself at a massive advantage if you do it incorrectly. Inventory management before you go to a boss is a massive deal. Being prepared before you even start the fight can obviously make the difference between being able to get the kill or just dying over and over again. There's a ton of different items and things that you may want to take into your inventory with you. So what I'm going to do is, rather than explaining this for ages, I'm just going to clarify how important it is, and then say I will link a video in the description of my recent guide going over inventory management and preset setup and all this sort of stuff, which will help you with that and explain it in depth. So once you do start getting to the point where you're going to want to be killing bosses, you're going to need a basic understanding of ability rotations so you can do a decent amount of damage. You understand what you're doing with your abilities, of course, all that sort of good stuff is important. It doesn't have to be perfect, but this is going to improve over time, so you just need a basic understanding of what to do. So you could look up a guide on YouTube, just like you have with this one, and you could look up like specific ability rotations. I have a Necromancy rotation guide if you want to check that out. Again, I'll link all the useful videos in the description. But you're also going to want to set up your action bar and keybinds as well. This is going to make a big difference. You definitely want to set up your keybinds, your action bar, all of that sort of stuff, but put the abilities in an order that makes sense as well on your action bar for your ability rotation. That way you're pressing number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and then then sort of cycling back through them. This is obviously not going to be that straightforward, but it will definitely help. But having an understanding of a basic ability rotation so you can deal damage and understand what you're actually doing and why you're doing it is going to be a big deal. Again, this isn't just like a, oh, now I know it. It's going to take time. It's going to take practice, and it's going to take a little bit of like reading and studying into and just putting it into practice in the actual game. Following on from your basic ability rotation in terms of like your actual damage outputs, you're then going to want to know and understand defense abilities as well. Many learners take like this for granted and overlook it, and it makes a massive difference. It is a mistake to not understand these. Defense abilities in RuneScape are broken as crap. They're so damn good. They're OP as hell, and they're going to make you learn PvM so much easier. It really is. So learn about your defense abilities, read through them, understand what they do, look up a guide. Again, I think I have one. I'll put it in the description for this one too. But it's going to basically lead to you being able to deal with mechanics a lot easier, reduce damage that you take a lot easier, and just get you out of sticky situations and make your life so much better. Not to mention there's many bosses in the game that defense abilities are needed for. You have to use them to deal with some mechanics. So this is going to be a massive part of your bread and butter in PvM as well. But spending time to fully understand what defense abilities do and how they work and how they scale with different tiers of shields or different like abilities now with necromancy is important as well. So look up a guide for it, get used to using them, keep buying them in a place that makes sense for you as well, and just put them into practice in places when you are doing PvM. Even when you start at the bottom and you focusing on lower level bosses and moving the way up, you should still be using your defense abilities whenever you get the chance, whether it's suitable to use them, because you're going to get used to using them correctly. Things like resonance to heal yourself, debilitate to reduce damage that you take, devotion to fully negate some damage in some situations. All of this is super important. So don't overlook it, and don't sort of think it's not worth the time and effort, because it's probably one of the better parts of things to learn about. The next part is understanding the difference between familiars and also different buffs that you may want to use for PvM for specific bosses as well. Understanding what familiar is going to be useful in which situation is going to make your life a lot better, especially when new bosses release into the game. You'll be able to look at that boss and think, okay, I think this is going to be more important here, or maybe while I'm learning I should take advantage of this familiar with this effect. There's many different effects. For example, the Ripper Demon is pretty much just straight up damage, but it does a hell of a lot of damage. Calgarian Demon is going to buff your critical hit rate, and you have the Hellhound, which is of course going to reduce the amount of damage that you take, but you're then also going to have to consider that, am I going to be too busy to manage healing it? Is it going to keep dying? If so, then maybe you want to take a yak instead and just bring some extra food, because that way your yak's not going to die, and all of these things worth taking into account. So you want to understand what the different familiars you have are available to you and why you would use them in which situation. You'll learn this as you start taking on different bosses, because the guides that you watch and stuff will probably tell you, okay, this familiar is used here and this is why. So that's why you kind of pick it up, but keep that in mind as well. And then also buffs that you're going to use for different bosses too, such as weapon poisons, which aura to use in which situation, and anything along that sort of line. Incense sticks, all of this good stuff is going to make a big difference and affect your kills a hell of a lot. So just keep track of where you use what, and then think when you go to a new boss, hey, can I bring that weapon poison that I took to Karapak? Can I bring that to the Arc Glacier? Yes, you can, and it's going to help you out a load as well. Number 7 is going to be doing a little bit of homework and studying in on boss fights before taking them on as a brand new player to that boss. Now, this is going to be different for different people, because some people are going to want that excitement of going in to take on a boss with having no idea what the hell it does, and they want that. They want that challenge of, hey, I don't know what the hell this boss is going to do to me. That's the fun of it. If that's the fun of it for you, then obviously you don't even need to worry about this bit. Skip on to the next one, because it doesn't matter. But if you are someone who necessarily doesn't mind about that, but you are really struggling with killing bosses, and even if you do try that and then you're just really struggling, rather than getting frustrated and burnt out, check up a guide. I guarantee you, every boss in this game has many guides on YouTube, on Wiki, in like PvMe Discord, all of these places. There's guides everywhere for bosses in this game, and so you'll always find one that makes sense for you. But taking advantage of the fact that you have that available to you, someone who will explain what the mechanics do and how to deal with them. If there's something that's not quite clicking in your head, you're like, how am I supposed to deal with this ability? It keeps killing me over and over and over again. Someone's posted it online for you to find. And so taking advantage of this tool is going to save you a lot of time and a lot of frustration. If you're going to get burnt out, if you don't want to waste a ton of time on it, then look up a guide, do some little bit of homework on it, study on how to do the mechanic that you're struggling with, see if you're missing any items that you should be taking with you, all of these sort of things. Use the resources that you've got available to yourself. This next thing, people are going to go, I hate doing this, I don't want to do this, and I'm going to talk about prayer flicking. But I'm not just talking about soul split flicking, okay? I'm not saying you have to be able to soul split flick where you are changing to soul split all the time and then just prayer flicking for regular hits. I'm talking about prayer flicking in general. This is basically where you change your protection prayers, so protect from melee, range, or magic, or necromancy now, to something else in a boss fight that requires you to do so. Now, the reason I'm talking about this at all and not just saying this is something you'll learn later on is because these are required in some boss fights now, and if you don't do it, it makes a huge difference, especially for someone, for example, if you're starting out at a lower level, you're doing God Wars Dungeon 2, and you are trying to kill Vindicta. In Vindicta, there is one part of the fight that's going to require you to change to a different protection prayer from melee to ranged to make sure you don't take a ton of damage, and then back to melee again to go back to protecting the right thing. Now, as you become a new player, a new PvMer, this isn't going to be that easy to do. You're going to be thinking, wait, it's just one key press, right? Or two key presses. You can already on protect from melee, you're going to click to protect from range, and you're going to click back to protect from melee again. Simple, right? This is going to confuse the crap out of you, especially when you're focusing on other abilities and you're focusing on other mechanics and where your health is and what do you need to eat? Do you need to use a prayer potion? Do you need to do a special attack? Is there anything else you need to do? There's many things going on, right? Adding this in can definitely make a lot of difference, but it's also going to make a lot of difference to your kill as well, because you're not going to be eating as much because you take way less damage. And even in these early parts of the game, prayer flicking is a skill that's going to make a world of difference. Now, as you move up into the higher level stuff, you're going to be realizing that prayer flicking is built into boss mechanics, and it is a big part of PvM. So this is a skill that everybody should definitely work on and practice. And you can do that. You can practice prayer flicking at Raksha. You can practice prayer flicking at the Arc Glacier as well. And you can go in there in practice mode with just like some gear on and some really cheap food like green blubbers or something. Just try and prayer flick as much as you can. Then when he does mechanics that like obviously don't let you prayer flick, just teleport out and reset and do that until you get comfortable with it. And then once you're comfortable with it, you can start taking on these bosses as well and putting it into practice more. But prayer flicking is a huge skill, and I highly doubt that it's going to be written out of boss mechanics in the future. They just released Zamorak a little like as one of the last bosses. He has it in there, it's important there. So I'd be very surprised if they change their mind on this and make it never needed to be done in the future as well. Next is going to be movement and positioning in fights. Now you might think, this is RuneScape. You don't need to worry about movement and positioning. What do you mean? It's actually really important. A lot of mechanics really matter about this, and having a good idea of where you're going to be standing at what part of a fight and your positioning to prepare for mechanics and your actual movement like mechanics as well is a huge deal in PvM, because there's going to be mechanics that you want to set up for before they even happen. On screen there's going to be an example of that with the Sanctum Guardian here, and he has a mechanic that does a water blast from the middle of the room all the way around and then back to the middle. Your movement's important here, and your positioning is important because you position yourself to the left-hand side of where it's going to start, and then once it starts traveling around, then you move over to the right-hand side until it comes back, and then you reposition yourself again back to the left-hand side, even though you're like, oh, well, it's not going to happen for ages. Your positioning is important, because if you forget, because loads of other things are happening as well, then it's going to make a big deal. So you prepare yourself for mechanics before they happen with your positioning, and then you have to deal with those mechanics with your movement as well. This can seem like a lot, especially when you're learning PvM, so the lower level bosses tend not really to need this all that much. Once you get to like God Wars Dungeon 2, maybe it becomes more important, but then it's not like mega punishing if it happens, so you can just deal with it quite easily. But a lot of other places, especially in the higher like level bosses and stuff, you're going to have some very hard-hitting mechanics that if you don't deal with them, they're just going to kill you outright pretty much from not dealing with them, the movement and the positioning as much as you need to. So when you get those opportunities to learn this in the early PvM levels, learn it, like take advantage of it, get used to watching where your character is when other mechanics are happening, and get used to thinking ahead and thinking, right, the next mechanic is going to be this, so I need to position my character over here so that I don't fail on this mechanic. Okay, number 10. This one's going to be a bit of a cop-out one. Practice and patience. Guys, practice and patience. PvM is not easy. It might look easy when you watch a YouTuber or a streamer do it. It's not. It's not easy. There's a reason that most people you see that are doing high-level PvM have a reputation for dying a lot, especially me. PvM takes a hell of a long time to master for most people. Every now and again, you're going to see an anomaly of someone who's just insanely good, and we hate them people. No, I'm kidding. We don't hate them people. You're just really good, right? But for the average player, for most people, especially like myself, you spend a hell of a long time. And I don't mean like let's spend like 5 hours. I am talking hundreds and hundreds of hours before you get to a point where you are comfortably doing PvM really well. And there's always still stuff to learn. Like, I still need to learn so much damn stuff as well and improve in so many ways if I want to actually get better at PvM. So don't get frustrated. You have to be patient and you have to keep practicing. Now, one thing I will say is if you're struggling with something specific in the game, this is the best way to practice. You see something, you're like, I really struggle with prayer flicking, like we just said before. Go out of your way to specifically practice prayer flicking. Then when you get that, it's fine, it's done. You write these things off one at a time. So if you're really bad at inventory management, then make a plan and go, hey, I need to remember what to take to every single boss and set myself up. If you're really bad at a very specific mechanic, like using defensives at the right time on a mechanic, go and practice it until you've got it. Practice some more, practice again, and then when you wake up, practice again. Obviously, don't spend your life on RuneScape, that's a bad idea, but you know what I mean. When you're playing, you're gonna die to bosses. It's gonna happen. Don't put it off. Don't go, I always die at this boss, so I'm not going to go. Practice that boss. You're going to die at it. It is what it is. I will tell you now, I've died more than you have, and I'll probably continue to die more than you will. So it is what it is. Be patient with it. Practice more and you'll be okay. All right, that's going to bring us to the end of this long as hell video. Now, I know that I probably over-explained stuff. I probably went way more deep into explaining stuff than I needed to for many things, but I wanted to on purpose because I'm going to title this something like, this is a ultimate PvM beginner guide or everything you need to know about being a PvM beginner, something along those lines, right? It's going to be something like that. And I wanted to make sure I made everything clear. And whenever I thought of questions that people might say, oh, well, what about this though? I wanted to explain it in depth and make sure that people could follow it. It's probably going to cost me some views because it's going to be a long as hell video, but as long as it explains things clearly for people, I'm happy with it. That being said, I hope the video was useful. If you do have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below and I'll answer them whenever I get the chance. But also, reach out to me on Discord if you want. Send me a message. I do reply to anyone that I can on there. Sometimes it takes a little while whenever I'm working on different things and whatnot, but I will replying and help you out as much as I can. Otherwise, if you're new around here, please do consider subscribing. Videos like this take a freaking hell of a long time. And other than that, I'll catch you all in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye.